Okay, I'm back. I was just having some difficulty getting the live stream going. But I have a great technician here, my wife, and she solved all the problems. So let's begin. Sorry I'm a little late. Let's begin by doing the invocation mantras. This is mantras in Sanskrit. These are mantras in Sanskrit, which is showing our devotion and respect to our teachers, those who are guiding us on our path. And then those two first mantras are to the principle of teacher and spirituality. Second two are to my, specifically to my teacher, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And then we'll chant the Panchatattva mantra, which brings auspiciousness in chanting, and then the Hare Krishna mantra. So we'll begin. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Miritam Jena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namah. Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shtapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapodantikam Namayom Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirbhishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Tarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Rama 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 Hare Okay, this evening we are beginning with the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. This 10th chapter is considered one of the essential chapters in Gita. Specifically, some great teachers of the past, and my teacher, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, says that the heart of the Gita are in the verses 10, 8 through 12, I believe. I believe it's the 4 Chatur Shloki, or 4 heart verses of the Gita. So that in this way, both chapter 9 and 10 are very important to the Gita. It's in the Bhakti section of the Gita. The first 6 are usually considered where Krishna introduces Karma Yoga, gives us a little introduction to Dhyana Yoga in the 6th chapter. And then the Acharyas have said that 7 through 12 is the Bhakti section of Gita. So we are in the heart of the Bhakti section of the Gita, 13 through 18. And Krishna talks a lot about Jnana Yoga, or the yoga of knowledge. So Karma Yoga, the yoga of action; Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of love and devotion; and Jnana Yoga, the yoga of knowledge. So it's described that Bhakti is placed in the center of the Gita because Bhakti is actually providing life force to both Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. It gives life to Karma Yoga, because when we talk about action, how to become detached from the fruits of your action and see them as an offering to the Supreme. Karma Yoga's real potency is when you detach yourself from trying to enjoy the fruits of your actions because you are offering it to the Supreme. Allah, Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is offering everything to the Supreme. And Jnana Yoga, knowledge, is knowledge for what end? It's not to have a degree on your wall that I'm a Gita scholar, but it is actually knowledge about the Supreme. More we gain knowledge of the Supreme, the more we begin to understand our position as individual parts and parcels or sparks of the Supreme. And the more we are able to understand ourselves, the more we're able to understand or come closer to reviving our connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's why you'll see in the Gita, all throughout the Gita, you'll see the Sanskrit words Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, the Sanskrit, and then the English translation, depending on which which Bhagavad Gita translation you have. In Prabhupada's Gita, always it's the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Bhagavan. So Bhagavan is an address to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhagavan means from Parasara Muni, a great sage of distant past, says that Bhagavan indicates that personality who possesses bhagya. Bhagya means opulences. So that person who possesses the opulences of fame, wealth, beauty, knowledge, renunciation, fame, wealth, beauty, strength, those 6 opulences of fame, wealth, beauty, strength, knowledge, and renunciation. We can see in ourselves and in others those qualities that one may have. Someone may be beautiful. Someone may be extraordinarily beautiful. Someone may be very intelligent. Someone may be extraordinarily intelligent. And when someone has extraordinary beauty or extraordinary intelligence or extraordinary strength or wealth, etc., then that person kind of stands out from the crowd. But that person may be extraordinarily beautiful or wealthy or famous, etc., but they do not possess all the qualities of wealth, fame, beauty, renunciation, strength, etc. So Bhagavan, when the term is used in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, it means that personality who possesses those characteristics, those qualities of fame, wealth, beauty, strength, knowledge, and renunciation in completion, in perfection. So that's one of the definitions that we gain from the Vedas in terms of God. What is God? And so that's why Bhagavan can also be used in the Vedic text in relationship to a great personality, a great saintly personality. But in this particular case in Gita, all of the past masters, spiritual masters who have commented, given us purports or insights into the Gita, have agreed that the use of Bhagavan in this regard is referring to Krishna as God. And not only God, because there's also mention of Shiva and Brahma, in terms of gods. But what we'll see in the 10th chapter, that Krishna is separated even from those. So let's begin reading. I'm only going to read the English so that we can move at a more rapid pace. So chapter 10, text 1, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, thus Sri Bhagavan Vacha, said, "Listen again, O mighty armed Arjuna, because you are my dear friend. For your benefit, I shall speak to you further, giving knowledge that is better than what I have already explained." In the fourth chapter, in the third verse of the fourth chapter, and that's why even if you're joining our sessions later, there's always reference and cross-reference back to the earlier chapters, to the later chapters, etc. So the analogy I used last class to describe this is if you have a sugar cane and you bite anywhere in the sugar cane, it's equally as sweet. So in the Gita, even if you're just tuning in and we're on chapter 10, the knowledge that is contained herein is sweet in the 10th chapter. And it also references what we have spoken about already in the previous 9 chapters and what we will speak about in chapters 11 through 18. So no worries. And I also try to put some modern day relevance to what we discuss. So in the fourth chapter, Krishna has already mentioned the same point. What does he say? He says, the science of yoga. The science of yoga is today told by me to you because you are my devotee and as well as my friend. So Krishna has reiterated this point. Because you are my devotee, knowledge comes to you. Specifically, someone like Arjuna, who has an intimate relationship on the level of confidential friend. Also, because you are in that position, this knowledge is being revealed to you, which indicates that the Bhagavad Gita is not simply a scholarly text. It is not Vedeshu Durlabham Adurlabham Bhakta Atma. The particular characteristic of Bhagavad Gita and other sacred texts like the Srimad Bhagavatam and other texts that particularly Vaishnavas or devotees of Krishna refer to, these sacred texts are not understood through scholarly means. That's what Vedeshu Durlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhakta. And even that can hold true for the Upanishads and the other Puranas, etc. In other words, in order to be able to see things consistently with great clarity, then this knowledge is revealed to that person, that sincere person who is seeking knowledge. And it's not by intellect or scholarly endeavor can these secrets be revealed. But Krishna says many times in the Bhagavad Gita, you are my friend, you are my devotee, Tesham Satatam Yuktanam Bhajatam Priti Purvakam, Priti, because you are dear to me, because you are devoted to me, I give you the knowledge by which you can come to me. So bhakti is a very unique yoga system in that it is the yoga system of grace or mercy. In other words, what comes to us in the form of knowledge and clarity of perspective in relationship to God and our relationship with God is not coming by virtue of our brain or our intellect, but it has come by virtue of it's being given to, it's being bestowed upon us. And that is because what Krishna is saying here. Notice, every word in Gita is very important. Notice Krishna says, listen again. And a number of instances, Krishna says, just hear me, listen to me. And this is really the secret for all of us, you, me, everybody who is on the path of spirituality, on the path of yoga. It's really to utilize our listening faculty, listening carefully with rapt attention. So that's why Krishna is saying to Arjuna, listen again, hear me, pay attention to what I'm saying. It's described in other places that when one wants to engage in meditation, japa meditation, one of the things that is tantamount in importance is to be attentive. Sometimes people ask me, Lakshmi, what's the secret to chanting japa? And very, very simply, very clearly, it's to be attentive to the sound vibration and allow that sound vibration to enter the portals of the ears so that that sound goes to the heart. Otherwise, it stays on the tongue. If the attention's not there, it just stays on the tongue. So in terms of knowledge, when we are strongly desiring this wisdom, who am I? What is my purpose in life? How do I direct my energy while I'm in this particular body? When all of these questions come about, that if we're listening carefully, the answers are given to us, the answers are revealed. That's why Krishna says in the 15th chapter, Sarvasya chaham ridi, heart, ridi sanivishto, matak smritir jnanam aponam cha. Matak smritir jnanam aponam cha. So knowledge, remembrance, and even forgetfulness is coming from the Supreme, who's situated within the heart, and he's reciprocating with your desire. In other words, if you want to enjoy your senses, which is coming in contact with the sense objects, one of the things that's required to make a real go of it is to forget your relationship with God. Because if you remember your relationship with God and understand the nature of God and your relationship with that personality, then we are humbled in that understanding. Because why is Krishna saying just listen, just hear? Because by doing so, by hearing this knowledge of Gita and the Bhagavad Purana, Srimad Bhagavatam, and other sacred texts such as like the Shri Upanishad or the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu or other books like that, by hearing, we are gaining an understanding of God and God's greatness. So that quite naturally has two effects. One is it's humbling to us, as narcissistic as we want to be. If we're genuinely hearing, it has a humbling effect. And it's only through humility that one can approach God or his representative to learn. You don't go to a teacher and say, I know everything already. What would the teacher's natural reaction be? And why are you here? You know everything already, then why are you here? I always tease my son because sometimes he has the habit of saying, I know. So I'll tease him. I say, yes, you know everything. There's nothing I can teach you. No, I don't mean that, Daddy. I don't mean that. But some people do mean that. Some people deny, the importance of a teacher, particularly on one's spiritual path. We don't need a teacher. There are so many. My mind is my teacher. That's a scary thought. At least for me, it's a scary thought. My mind's my teacher. My mind's telling me to do so many crazy things. That's a really scary thought. My mind is my teacher. In the Bhagavad Gita, the word is used mano ratena. It's the chariot of the mind. So if the chariot is pulled by wild horses, imagine what's going to happen as a result. So those horses in the Gita, which are compared to our senses, those horses, in order to be effective in pulling the chariot so that it can go straight and can respond to your commands, so it can go in the direction that you want it to go in, those horses have to be tamed. And those horses also have to have reins on them. So it's described that the horses, 5 horses, are like the 5 senses. And the reins are the intellect. We pull those, when the senses start to go this way or that way, the reins help to control, pull it back into order, back into obedience, so that we can actually get to where we want to go. So in this way, teacher is very important in terms of our spirituality and our spiritual life. It's tantamount importance. That's why Krishna says in the 4th chapter, the most important thing is that you find a teacher, you render service to that teacher and listen to that teacher. And that's exactly the relationship that Krishna and Arjuna has. Why? Arjuna, in the 2nd chapter, what does Arjuna say? I'm confused. He has the presence of mind, at least to admit his confusion, his bewilderment as to what to do and what not to do. Because only when we come to that point can we even hope to be connected with a teacher that can help us along our spiritual journey. Like I said, if we feel like we don't need a teacher's not necessary, my mind is my teacher, my intellect is my teacher, etc., then that will never happen. That relationship will never occur or never develop. It's only when we come to the point that Arjuna came to in the beginning of the Gita, after being bewildered by his intelligence, because Arjuna gave very significant points as to why he should not fight. But all of those points were based on the body and the mind. They were not based on one's soul, one's spiritual nature. And that's why Krishna did not accept what he was saying at that point. And that's why Arjuna became further confused and ultimately came to the admission that I need that teacher that can help free me from my confusion. This world is a bewildering place, is it not? I mean, so many things are going on around us, and I hear very frequently people say, I don't know what's going on. Well, join the club. A lot of us don't know what's going on. Most of humanity doesn't know what's going on. Not only with material affairs, like political affairs and things like that, but in terms of our own life. So what is necessary, what is of utmost importance, is that we train ourselves to hear. That's how we find a teacher. Because when we train our hearing with the characteristic of sincerity. Sincerity comes from the Latin word sincerus. Sincerus means without wax. That was the original. And how that came to be a word meaning what it means, honesty, an approach of honesty. Because sinceros, without wax, the Greeks and the Romans traded. And one of the things that the Greeks had, which was in high demand from Roman civilization, was pure white marble. So when you have pure white marble, even to this day, if you can get pure white marble without flaws, it's very costly. So the Greeks realized that there was higher value to pure white marble. So when they had white marble that had a defect, they developed a technique where they would put wax in it and try to hide the defect. But when the Romans found out what the Greeks were doing, then they said to them, I want white marble, sincerus, without any wax, which means the real thing, honesty. And then the Romans, when they were selling the white marble, if they had it, they would say sincerus, I have white marble, the highest quality marble without wax. So honesty is a great quality, especially when we are on the search for our knowledge that can lead us down our spiritual path. That's why I sing Om Jnana Timarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. We seek the teacher that bears the torchlight of knowledge, and that torchlight of knowledge illuminates my path. So very, very important principle to understand. Text 2. Neither and this is important because when someone asks about there are so many gods in Hinduism, listen how Krishna addresses this. Neither the hosts of demigods, that's Brahma, Shiva, Agni, Indra, all the various Varuna, Vayu, all the various demigods. Neither the hosts of demigods nor the great sages know my origin or opulences, for in every respect, I am the source of the demigods and sages. So this is an important principle to understand, especially if you are confused, when you read about various demigods, you hear about Ganesh, or you see people sing songs to Ganesh or Shiva, Om Namo Shivaya, various songs, etc., and demigods. According to Bhagavad Gita, they are not on the same level as Krishna, because Krishna himself states in the Gita, which is accepted, by the way, by all of the great wise people, even the great Advaitin philosopher Shankaracharya, who proposes that the ultimate reality is impersonal, and he put forth great arguments in that regard. But even Shankaracharya says, Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda Manguda. That foolish person, why don't you worship Govinda? Why don't you worship Govinda? Why don't you worship Govinda? Which is another name for Krishna. But Krishna is saying here, I'm the source of all. The demigods, the sages, the prakriti, the material energy, the spiritual energy. I am the source of all. Right there. So there is no doubt, no confusion. The only way you have doubt and confusion is if you want to be doubtful and confused. But knowledge, Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Das Mulas says, knowledge dispels doubt. So again, here's another reason for studying Bhagavad Gita. Whatever doubts you may have in what I'm saying or what the Gita is proposing, this embarking on the quest for pure knowledge helps to melt those doubts away. Just like as the sun rises, it begins to dissipate the fog. So there may be fog prior to sunrise, but when the sun rises and the heat of the sun dispels the fog. So as the sun rises or knowledge arises in our heart, then the fog of illusion is dispelled within our hearts, and we begin to see with greater clarity. And greater clarity means we're able to put the pieces together, the pieces of the puzzle together. We're able to connect the dots. Otherwise, without this knowledge, we can't connect the dots. As the purpose of life, teacher, all of these different aspects, all of these different questions that we ask that need to be answered in order to give us the proper direction. So Krishna says here, everything, demigods, sages, material energy, these are all my energies under my control. And even Brahma, one of the greatest of demigods, in his Brahma Samhita, he says, Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarvakara Karanam. So Ishvara Parama, the supreme Ishvara, the supreme controller, because sometimes Brahma is referred to as Ishvara, sometimes Shiva is referred to as Ishvara. But Lord Brahma himself in the Brahma Samhita states, Ishvara Parama Krishna, the supreme controller, Ishvara, is Krishna. Sarva Kara Karanam, the last line. That means Sarva Kara Karanam, all under the control of everything. So let's read on to text 3. So he states that the demigods are under his control, and the great sages. Text 3 says, he who knows me as the unborn, as the beginningless, as the supreme Lord of all the worlds, he only, undiluted among men, is freed from all sins. Now, if you recoil at the word sin, you should understand that sin in its origin means error, or to make a mistake, an error in judgment. But in Judeo-Christian, it means, something a little different. So there's sometimes people who read Gita, they have an aversion to sin and sinful life and this and that. It reminds them of Catholic school. I went to Catholic school for 5 years, and the nuns, don't you sin. The sins are going to cast you to hell. So we kind of have it embedded, if we come from the Judeo-Christian tradition, we have that embedded in our minds. Got to hear about sin, but it means erroneous judgment. So when Krishna is saying he only undiluted among men is freed from this erroneous perspective of life, that thinking that I'm the body, the mind, the intellect. The clarity of perspective is I'm the soul. That's why Krishna begins in his initial instructions to Arjuna. He begins by determining what is the difference between soul and matter, Purush and Prakriti. Prakriti being matter, that which is moving. And the Purush, the person, the consciousness that gives life force, life energy to matter. Matter in and of itself does not have life. If so, scientists would have, by manipulating the material energy, would have produced life. But that's not happened, because without the necessary component, the Purush, or the soul, the spiritual spark, without that necessary component, matter is not motivated. Matter does not move, does not grow. So that's why Krishna begins with making that distinction between matter and spirit. So unborn, beginningless. The soul is also described as unborn, is it not? Satchit Ananda. The soul is described as eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Beginningless. So what does eternal mean? I know in Christianity, eternal means when you begin, then from there on. But that's not really what's being referred to in terms of eternality, eternity. Eternity means always been, always will be. When Krishna and other great personalities within the Vedic paradigm use that word eternity, they're not saying you have a beginning and then from there on. They're saying never, like Krishna says in the second chapter, I think Matt and I were discussing this particular verse, never was there a time when I did not exist, Krishna says, nor you, Arjuna, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. That is Krishna's definition of eternality, eternity. Never was there a time when we did not exist. That is the meaning of that. So when Krishna, when the word here, he applies it to himself, Aja, there's a distinction. Aja, unborn, beginningless, yes. But there's another Sanskrit word which is called tatashta, that the living entity, because of its finiteness, it qualitatively, it's the same. The soul is the same as God, but it's finite proportions of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Finite. As the drop of water compared to the ocean, as the spark of the fire compared to the fire. It's finite. Drop is finite compared to the ocean. Spark is finite compared to the blazing fire. So this finiteness is what distinguishes the Shakti of the soul from the supreme soul. So what we're talking about here, what Krishna is saying, unborn, we're also unborn, but we, being finite, can be covered by Krishna's energy. And therefore, the soul is called Tatashta Shakti. Tatashta is a very interesting word. You know what it means? We're all, most of us are down here in Florida, but you've been to the beach. And you know that place between the ocean and the sand, that space there, that sometimes it's covered by water and then sometimes it's not. That's what Tatashta means. So Tatashta Shakti means can be covered or cannot be covered. So Tatashta Shakti means because of our finiteness, we can be covered by Krishna's energy, the material energy. And the result of that covering leads to forgetfulness of our relationship with the Supreme. That's the result. So that's why when Krishna says, I am unborn, Aja, and beginningless, it's different when it's applied to the soul. Because one thing Krishna says in the 4th chapter, he says that the distinction between you and me, Arjuna, is I can remember every time I appear in this world or not. I am always in full awareness of who I am. But you, Arjuna, you will forget. You cannot remember. Can any of you remember the innumerable births you have taken prior to this birth in a male body or a female body? That's what Krishna is saying. Again, he's making many different statements in the Gita, which is showing the difference between soul and supreme soul. So tatashta is an important word to understand, because in relationship to the soul, it means the soul can be covered. But when Krishna says, I am unborn, I am beginningless, it's with the understanding that he cannot be covered. He is not in the tatashta category, but rather he is in the category of the Supreme, Bhagavan. So that's a distinction. Although qualitatively the same, we're comprised of the same substance, Brahman, but qualitatively there's a distinction. I kind of like to drive this point home, because once we get it, we really get that point, there's a lot of aha moments as a result of getting that, understanding that. Understanding 2 points. This point that I'm discussing right now, the distinction of aja in relationship to the soul and aja or unborn in relationship to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's point 1 that opens up a lot of doors of understanding. Point 2 is to understand that the Supreme has different manifestations. The manifestation of Brahman, or its impersonal feature, the manifestation of Paramatma, which is the soul, the divinity within the heart that is separate and distinct from the jiva, the soul. There's a supreme soul and an individual soul, the individual spark that's there. And then the third manifestation is the Bhagavan, or the personality, the Supreme Personality manifestation. If we understand clearly those 2 points, we are far and away into understanding the nature of spiritual knowledge. Just those 2 points right there. So note them down, meditate on them. Remember, I told you in terms of the Vedic paradigm for education or knowledge acquisition is one that we hear from a bona fide, qualified source. Number 2, that we reflect on what we've heard. And number 3, we assimilate, try to incorporate that within our life. And number 4 is we share it. When we have something good, we share it. Those 4 attributes are very important in terms of acquisition of knowledge, spiritual knowledge. So, 2 points. God manifests in 3 different features: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, or the spiritual energy, divinity within the heart, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this point about finite Satchidananda and infinite Satchidananda. Those 2 points really will take us a long way, help us to advance very. Okay, text 4 and 5. And this is in keeping with the verse I quoted, Sarvasya chaham ridi sanivishto matak smritir gyanam aponam cha, where Krishna says in that 15th verse of the 15th chapter, I am the source of knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So read what he says here, 4 and 5. Intelligence, knowledge, freedom from doubt and delusion, forgiveness, truthfulness, control of the senses, control of the mind, happiness and distress, birth, death, fear, fearlessness, nonviolence, equanimity, satisfaction, austerity, charity, fame, and infamy. All these various qualities of living being are created by me alone. So again, what is needed to help us in our journey is always there. The nature of supreme is reciprocation. That is the nature of the supreme. You've heard it maybe put out like whatever you put out into the universe. So the Krishna Bhakti perspective is whatever is shared with Krishna, Krishna reciprocates. So all of these various qualities are created by Krishna alone. Text 6. The 7 great sages, and before them the 4 other great sages and the Manus, progenitors of mankind, come from me, born from my mind, and all the living beings populating the various planets descend from them. So here is an indication that there is a secondary creation system. The primary creation system is coming from the Supreme. The secondary creation system is incorporated within the personality of Brahma, who appears in the universe and is given charge of the creation of the various species, the 8,400,000 species of life that have to manifest. So this is, an indication here. These various sages, Prajapatis, they're called, the Manus, the kind of the emperors of the universe, so to speak, and all the living beings populating the various planets descend from this secondary system of creation to bring the souls and the various species into being. Text 7. One who is factually convinced of this opulence and mystic power of mine engages in unalloyed devotional service. Of this, there is no doubt. So again, when Krishna is asking, Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskaru, just surrender to me, worship me, devote your energy to me. And in this way, there are various ways that Krishna makes this statement here. He's saying if you're understanding these points, then there is a willingness to engage in service. There is that willingness. Otherwise, without this knowledge, there's resistance. I'm not going to. A higher power, I'm the highest power on the planet. I just have to surrender to me. But hearing Krishna saying, no, you get this knowledge, you are put into your position, your proper position, the proper understanding of your position as this tiny, minute spark of spiritual energy, which is housed in the Prakriti, in the various shapes and forms, 8,400,000 species, the Vedas say. And I've heard even science now is accepting at least 8 million species of life existence. So they're coming closer to agreement, at least on this point. So that's, if we're convinced of what this opulence and mystic power that Krishna emanates, then it's easier to engage, to put down the resistance and to engage in devotional service. So now we have 10 minutes or 8 minutes. I'm going to read through, I want to get to the Chatur Shloki, the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, and then I'll discuss as much as I possibly can in the short amount of time that we have, and then we'll pick up from there. So this is text 8. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me, reiterating that point. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. 9. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. Again, Krishna says, listen, hear. So this is reiterating that point. That's 9. This is 10. To those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. And then to underscore this point just made, text 11, to show them special mercy, I dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. So that's the 4 verses, 8, 9, 10, and 11. I am the source of spiritual worlds. Therefore, if you understand that, perform devotional service. The thoughts of my pure devotees, those who do understand, are dwelling in the Supreme, and they derive great bliss, sharing their realizations and their understandings about the Supreme. And 10, to those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give them the understanding by which they can come to me. Again, I pointed out, it is the yoga, bhakti is the yoga of grace. It is not something that can be understood with one's intellect, but it is something that is bestowed upon us as we reciprocate. Krishna makes it clear. There's reciprocation. In the 4th chapter, he also says, as they surrender to me, I reciprocate accordingly. So this is an important principle. One of the 4 Chatur Shlokis, or 4 essential verses of Gita. And then 11, which is the 4th verse, to show them special mercy, I dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. So to underscore what Krishna said in the previous verse, to those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. This 11th verse underscores that 10th verse. So these are very, very essential verses in the Bhagavad Gita. And I'm just going to give a little time if we want to discuss any of the things that we read so far or that I said so far. So I'm going to open the floor to you all, and anyone who has a question, a comment, a realization, please feel free to speak. How about Matthew? You always have some good questions. Is there anything in relationship to the questions that you sent me?
With the soul being eternal, we've always existed, and we were also unborn. We're always there. So when Brahma created the material nature, and the Manus, who were the progenitors of everything living and everything, So the souls that fell to the material worlds didn't all fall at the same time. I think there was someone
Yeah,
went and then others kind of followed
yeah,
to see what
it unfolded, right? Yeah. And do you know the story of how Brahma um, actually realized that that's what he was to do?
No.
There is there are three expansions of Krishna which are in charge of creation. The first one is called Mahavishnu. And from Mahavishnu, within the form of Mahavishnu are all the latent living beings. And Mahavishnu injects those living entities into the womb of material nature. And then there is another Vishnu called Garbhodakshay Vishnu. So there's a Vishnu that injects the souls into the womb of material nature. There is a Vishnu, again, expanded from Mahavishnu, that's in charge of the universe, each universe. So when we say that Mahavishnu injects the souls, that means into all universes. And then each universe has a Vishnu called Garbhodakshay Vishnu, and each universe has the secondary creator, Brahma. So Brahma comes from that Vishnu, from that Garbhodakshay Vishnu in the center of the universe. There is a lotus flower that sprouts from his navel, and Brahma is in that lotus flower. And when that all occurs, he does not know what is his purpose in life. And that's when he sits in meditation and hears, perform yoga, perform tapasya. So Brahma sits in meditation, and the actual first yoga book is not the Yoga Sutras. It's the Hiranyagarbha Darshan, Yoga Darshan. And that was written by Brahma, but it's no longer extant. It's no longer existent. It's gone because Brahma did the yoga and went through the meditation, and as a result had full realization. So that's the story of Brahma and how to create all, the different moving parts that are involved in creation. It all came about through Brahma's being a recipient of knowledge, which came through the Gayatri mantra. That mantra, Gayatri mantra, it's called the Brahma Gayatri mantra. Om Bhurvubhuvah Tat Saviturvarenyam Bhargadevasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat. That's the Brahma Gayatri mantra. That contains within it so much spiritual potency. And Brahma was a recipient of all his wisdom by virtue of that Gayatri mantra, which came through from Krishna's flute. So that's the story of Brahma and his obtaining secondary creatorship. Anything else? Anyone else would like to say something, or either question or make a comment, or any realizations or any doubts that are there? Happy
I
to.
am very sorry, but I have a problem with a word and I cannot find it. In Jack,
In what?
you said in Jack, the souls in the womb.
Uh-huh. Inject.
Oh, all right. No. Okay. Thank you.
The good parallel that you can use is the creation conception. Sperm going into the ovum, and once the sperm goes into the ovum, everything is put into motion. So a good way to understand that injection of the living entities by Mahavishnu into the womb of material nature. And then that starts the whole process going. Okay. So if there are no further comments or questions, thank you so much for your kind attention. And I very much look forward to seeing you next week. Same time, same station. And we'll continue discussing the 4 verses, 8 through 11. So if you want to reread them and get an idea of what's going on with those, and if any questions spring from rereading them, if not, continue reading so that you have a little familiarity with the verses that we'll be talking about next week. So until that time, you all have a very happy, healthy, and holy week ahead of you. And I look forward to your association next Wednesday, which will be, today's the 9th, so it's the 16th, is it? August 16th? Next Wednesday, same time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you very much. Until that time, Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna, Laksmi.
Thank you.